Hello and welcome to our Judson University webinar, Nailing Your Job Hunt. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Katie and I'm going to be moderating our webinar tonight. To begin with, let's go ahead and cover the agenda, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we are going to talk about during our time together. So first up, we will hear from the Director of Career Services, Rachel Hamann, all about the very first step of the job hunt, and really the most important one, which is where to find job postings. After that, you'll hear a few tips about how to know whether a job is really the right fit for you. And then we'll talk a little bit about how Judson University helps students find their footing during the job hunt. At the very tail end of our conversation, we will spend some time during a Q&A session where our panelists will answer any of the questions you have about looking for a job or about Judson University in general. Speaking of which, I would like to call your attention to the bottom of your screen where you will see a Q&A button. If at any time during our webinar you have a question, feel free to go ahead and type it in there, and our panelists will do their best at the end of our session to answer your questions. So with that said, let me go ahead and introduce you to our hosts this evening. Tonight we are joined by two of Judson's finest. First of all, we have, like I mentioned earlier, Rachel Hamann, who is the Director of Career Services here at our university. And then we also have Kim Surin on the webinar, who is our Enrollment Manager. Now, Kim helps adult students enroll in school, and of course, she manages the team who helps our adult students work their way to graduation. So with that said, I am going to go ahead and turn the time over to Rachel to kick things off.
Thanks, Katie. Well, as Katie said, my name is Rachel Hamann, and I work in the Career Services office here at Judson University. Thanks for letting me join you all today. Here at Judson, we provide a variety of career services to our students and our alumni. Those services include anything from resume consultations to job search help, to mock interview experiences, to assistance with graduate school admittance, connections with alumni in your field, virtual and in-person career fairs, networking opportunities, and strengths-based training and coaching. And one of the things I love the most about smaller institutions such as Judson is that we have an individualized approach that we are able to take with each student. Career Services has the ability to tailor our strategy to meet the needs of each student. Every student and alumni who walks into our office has a unique story and is in a different spot on their career path. It keeps things exciting around here. No day is the same, and we really love it that way. So we are talking about the job search a little bit this evening, and the most obvious question is, where do we even start in a job search these days? Of course, many of you have heard of free job sites such as LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, and more. All those services are free to use. Another resource for us in looking for jobs is actually the career pages of companies and industries and organizations. Even if you don't know if they're hiring and you don't see positions posted on Indeed or LinkedIn, if there's a company or organization that you're curious about, we always encourage our students to look into that website, look at their careers or employment page, see if they're hiring, and see what they're looking for. Another obvious is with your own network. We talk to old colleagues, current colleagues, employers, and friends to see what's available. Another great resource is actually professional organizations. Typically, industries have some kind of professional organization that you can belong to, and a lot of times those organizations hold networking opportunities and internal career fairs and things like that. And it's really important when you job search to find the best match. One of the more obvious questions that you can ask yourself in looking to see whether or not a job is a good fit for you is to ask yourself, how far am I willing to travel for work? You want to know if this job is realistic for where you live or if you could work remotely. And these days with Zoom and with working virtually, that's a really great question to ask yourself. If it's a job that you are very curious about, you can ask yourself, is this job something that I would move for? Am I interested enough in this job to pursue it if it means moving? Okay, and the next slide for finding the best match. Another great question to ask yourself, I think we're on the next slide, is does this position cater to my strengths or interests? If you're excited by the job description and match most of the required qualifications, you have found a good match. And in career services, we do this little exercise with our students where we ask them to print out the job description. Then we ask them to go ahead and highlight all of the qualifications on the job description that they think that they meet. And then we ask our students to also highlight anything that they're interested in learning more about. And kind of one of the standards that we go by is if you have highlighted 3/4 of that job description, then you can feel pretty confident in going ahead and applying for that job. You also want to know in looking for a job is if the position pays fairly. Some great places to look are salary.com, PayScale, and Indeed. Those are a few places you can check to see what the average salary for your position is in your area. You can always check also with your network in LinkedIn to see if you know anyone who works for this company or if you can connect with someone who does work there. You can hold an informational interview with that individual and ask things like salary range or work-life balance, if there's fair and equal pay. Those are all really important questions to make, and those are important connections to make within the organization. So we always advise our students, if you're applying for something, look at your LinkedIn connections and see if you know anybody or know somebody who works at that organization, and see if you can connect and have that informational interview with that individual. Okay, the next slide. Does this company meet my work-life balance needs? Glassdoor is a great resource to read company reviews and get a better idea of what the work environment is like. We love Glassdoor. Keep in mind, however, oftentimes people leave reviews when they're upset. So use Glassdoor as a resource, but also check out things like the Better Business Bureau, Yelp, etc., to get a more nuanced picture. And again, that's where something like an informational interview with that professional LinkedIn connection could provide to be useful. Okay, so Judson offers career consultations for Judson students and alumni via Zoom meetings and phone appointments and in-person appointments at this time. Again, we offer our students an individualized approach depending on where they are at in their career journey. Another great resource that Judson has is something called Judson Connect, which basically is like a LinkedIn between Judson alumni and current Judson students, or alumni to alumni relations. It's a place just for Judson students to find job postings, communities, and Judson alumni to connect with. There's also a lot of industries and different careers that are represented by Judson alumni within Judson Connect. A lot of universities have this type of software, and there's a reason why. Alum trust the training that they are nostalgic of their own experience and looking to give back to students that were on the same path that they were way back when. Judson Connect is a great platform for students to meet with alumni, for alumni to meet with alumni and reminisce. Judson Connect also helps you build your network. You can connect with our experienced alumni working in different careers and industries at companies all around the world. You can also get professional advice. You can have conversations with people who have been where you are through online chat or by phone. We've had students make connections with alumni that have turned into internship opportunities, that have turned into employment opportunities, and it's all began with those informational interviews or just hitting the chat button and asking an alum, hey, can I ask you a few questions about a resume? Can I ask you a few questions about networking? Those types of things. We've had a lot of success stories with Judson Connect. Okay, I think that's all I have as far as the job search, but I look forward to any questions that are coming my way. So I am going to turn it back to you, Katie.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Appreciate you spending your time and sharing your expertise. So a lot of
Happy
great
to do it.
information. Yeah, and as Rachel said, remember that as a Judson student, you do have access to Judson Connect. So if you have questions about the job hunt, or I'm sorry, as well as career services. So if you have questions about the job hunt, I'm sure Rachel and her team are there to help you. Now, before we move on to Q&A, I did want to share a couple of reminders. First up, we have classes here at Judson that start year-round, but there are some coming up soon in just a few short weeks. So if you'd like to apply last minute, or if you are in the process of applying but need a little bit of help, please call Kim and her team at the phone number on the screen. I will go ahead and put that into the chat of this webinar so that you can quickly write it down and remember it. But they are available at 888-627-0488, and they will help answer any of your burning questions and help you with your application. Now, one more reminder, and that is about our next webinar. Now, one really unique thing about Judson is that we do a lot to help our students move through their different degree programs. And while we do offer on-ground programs, we also offer online programs. And I'm sure that, as you can imagine, many of our students are busy adults, and that 100% online program offering is really helpful for them. So regardless of whether you're studying online or on ground, you are not doing it alone at Judson. And on September 16th, we will be sharing another webinar called Joining an Online Community, which is all about how you can build a community regardless of how you choose to study. And you can view, sign up for that webinar as well as view past ones by visiting judsondegree.com/webinars. And again, I will go ahead and pop that into the chat so you can write it down before, so it's easier to remember. Now, that's enough of me. Let's go ahead and move on to the Q&A session. As a reminder, if you joined late, welcome. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in there, and Kim or Rachel will do their best to answer it. But again, it looks like we have some questions that have already come in, so I'm going to go ahead and direct this one to Rachel. Rachel, this person says that they are an introvert and find networking to be a little awkward. I think that's something we can all kind of relate to. How would you, what recommendations and tips would you have for this person to help kind of make networking a little easier?
That's a great question. One of the interesting things about the time that we're living in with COVID is that a lot of human interactions are limited to kind of virtual modalities. So now is the time for the introverts to unite and be able to network without actually having to be in person on LinkedIn, and with any professional organizations or connections that you might have. In regular times, in times of not COVID, we would recommend for people who are a little more on the shy side or introverted to attend networking events with a friend, to do your research beforehand so that you know what companies or professionals are attending. Focus your energy on making connections with people who count towards your professional ambitions. So give yourself an attainable goal. Let's say, like, I'm going to walk into this networking event. I'm going to talk to these 3 individuals from these 3 companies. And then you can punch out when you've reached that goal. Another superpower that introverts have is intentionality. So be sure to follow up on any networking connections that you've made, any job interviews that you've had, with a personalized, intentional thank you note, because those go a long way. But that's a great question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. I think I'll save some of those for myself too. So this one's a next question for you, Rachel. This person says that they're looking at job interview, applications, and there are a lot of requirements listed. What happens if they don't meet all of the requirements? How many should you really be meeting ideally, and should you still apply if you don't meet them all?
Sure. That's another really great question. And I talked about it a little bit in the webinar, where we have students do the exercise where they highlight things that they feel competent in or skills that they have, and highlight things that they'd like to learn. But really, something that we don't often realize as prospective employees is that really job descriptions read as wish lists. Now, there are some non-negotiables within job descriptions. It's hard to determine what those are, but typically those are the first few things that you read. in a job description. Those are the most important things. So I would advise just trying to read between the lines a little bit in the job description. And honestly, if the job genuinely interests you and you hold at least, let's say, half of the requirements, we always say go for it.
Okay, great. Go for it. That's a good motto to have. So,
Especially these days.
Yeah, exactly. Kim, this next question is for you. And this is just about Judson specifically. Can you tell us if the campuses are open right now? And if so, which one? What are kind of the stipulations around going to class on campus?
It's a great question. As of right now, yes, we have started our transition back to campus classes. Our traditional students are on campus in Elgin. We are transitioning back some of our adult students as well. We are also transitioning some students back to classes at the Rockford campus. But we are doing this, following guidelines and being very cautious. So what we're telling our continuing students is to, make sure that you're checking your portal, make sure you're checking your eLearn to see where your class is going to be located based on, if we have enough social distance in the class. So if it's a big class, it will probably end up moving back to online just for safety purposes. For brand new students, they work directly with my enrollment team, and my enrollment team would be able to, let them know for sure whether they'd be on campus or online for their first classes.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering that, both of you. Well, that's about all the questions that we had today in our time. So thank you to everyone who joined. Just as a reminder, don't forget that you can call Kim and her team. And if you don't mind heading to the next slide, we'll have the phone number up again. And of course, last but not least, please feel free to join our next webinar on September 16th at 5:30, and we will be talking about joining an online community. So thank you, ladies, for attending, and thanks for all who have joined us today, and we hope you have a nice evening.